Aloha again to the Talk Story part of Dr. Dean Hawaii. And I have as my guest a man I'm privileged to say is my best friend. In some ways, Bob is an answer to a hope, even a prayer that I had to have a profound Dharma brother to share my life with. Of course, then he goes and moves from Hawaii, but that's another story. True to form, he's not what you might say a normal or usual guy. He's Hungarian born, raised on the East Coast. He's an ex-lawyer, ex-acupuncturist. He's also speaks 11 languages and is bright beyond belief, but also has the uncanny ability of not making me feel less than. He's probably the most dedicated spiritual seeker I know. He's somewhat like his father, who was a stamp collector, only in Bob's case he collects spiritual teachings and wisdom. He's a profoundly interesting man and delightful, and it's a privilege to call him a friend. My wife asked him what he's done since the summer where he was teaching his group in Colorado, just to give you a sense of how dedicated of a practitioner he is. And he says, well, on the way back he stopped in Iowa for 5 days and did a fairly esoteric Tibetan retreat called Vajra, and then stopped also in Florida on the way and did a 24/7 recitation of a prayer that's for loving kindness and compassion. So it's a privilege to call him a friend. If there's anything I would hope for is that our interview has a bit of what our morning coffee sessions have, like, where we cover everything from politics to personal wounds to spiritual growth and to all kinds of fun things. So welcome, Bob. And Bob, just to shift the energy a little bit and also for fun and for help, would you lead us in a short prayer of some sort, meditation?
Oh, sure. Okay.
All right. It's going to be serious.
I'm going to do it in Tibetan, if you don't mind.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Urjan yulji nup chang cham pemage sadong pola ya chan chogi ngorup ne pema jung ne jesu drak kor du kadro mang pokor keki jesu dadrup ji chinji lop chir shek su sol Guru Pema Siddhi Hum.
A brief translation would be in order.
This is an evocation to Guru Padmasambhava, who is considered a second Buddha in the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition. And as a historical person, he came to Tibet and brought Buddhism in the 8th century. As a symbol, he basically stands for the quality of a lotus. Padmasambhava means lotus born. Mm-hmm. And the quality of the lotus is that it grows out of the mud and the muck, and yet it maintains its purity. As a matter of fact, its purity is legendary. And so it's actually who we are. Mm-hmm. It's like we are grounded in ordinary world. We're grounded in ordinary what we call samsara, everyday concern. And at the same time, we are also completely pure. Our capabilities and our nature is beautiful and pure and readily available. And so this is an invocation of that within ourselves, on the internal level, and for the Guru on the external level.
So our own purity is being evoked.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So you came here, it's always a lot of things bring people to Hawaii, but in your case, at least the outward causation was your wife joined the symphony, ran the symphony for a while.
That's correct. My wife was the personnel manager for the Honolulu Symphony, yeah, before he went bankrupt, unfortunately.
and played the cello.
And played the viola, yes.
And then because of the dissolution and problems with the symphony, you've left. And I'm kind of wondering, what was the takeaway and what's it like to come back to Hawaii?
Probably the best, the most significant thing for me is that when I first came, the first night that we were here, we went to Zippy's for dinner. And I was looking around and saw this Hawaiian family sitting in a booth next to us, and there was this giant man, about 6'4", 280 pounds, and there were 4 or 5 kids, and they were totally like hanging off of him and climbing all over him, and he had the most incredible patience and love for these kids. This was his family. And that image stayed with me, not only while I was living here, but it stayed with me as the genuine, you know, what the Hawaiians call aloha. It was like here was somebody who was demonstrating it. This was not conceptual, this was not philosophical, this was just a human being manifesting and demonstrating love right in front of my eyes. And it's so seldom that we see that, you know, especially in men, especially under, you know, sort of ordinary family circumstances. And so I was very touched by that, and I've carried that away from here. And to me, Hawaii really is that quality of aloha.
It's not a trite word that we say it by any means. It's
no.
A privilege to live here.
It is, and I see it. I mean, like as I go down the street now, you know, I don't have to go to Zippy's. I notice it, and of course, you know, nature is so bright and beautiful and fertile here. That powerful, yeah, very powerful.
You know, apropos of that, you said that it actually took you a while to feel at home here in terms of how powerful the energies are, how uniquely uplifting they might be. You spoke about there was a period where you actually felt like you were welcome, but there was a delay. Can you talk about that one a little bit? What made you feel at home?
Yeah, it's an interesting aspect of life. I have a strong sense of what I guess we could call energy. And until my energy blends with that of a place or a person, I feel like there is more of a sense of separation. And yet, pretty much all the time, there are ways in which that opens up, and then I know that we have connected.
Yes.
And so it took a while for that to happen in Hawaii.
Yes.
And you know, I would go and sit in the ocean, and I would go and sit on a heiau or at the pali, and sort of hope that you know, that sense of separation would one day melt, and it did.
Yeah, but it is curious. It's like such a powerful place. It's like there's a permission blessing that's needed in order to actually feel at home here, like you are allowed to live here to a certain extent.
Yes.
And just today you talked about a certain kind of healing that happens when you come here. Different shifts that take place in you.
I reconnect with that. I mean, when I'm gone, I can in my mind I can connect with Hawaii and actually various sacred places around the globe that I've been privileged to travel and to study. But when you're in the physical environment, then just reconnecting, grounding yourself, and inviting that energy to also, not only your being here, kind of your energy goes there, but it also kind of comes up and embraces you and welcomes you. I mean, there again, this time it doesn't take a year and a half, it takes about an hour and a half. But as soon as I come and the door opens on the airplane, and you get that Hawaii smell, you know, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm back. And then there are certain layers of, like, you know, well, I've been sitting on the airplane for 6 hours, so you know, your body relaxes, but you can also almost tangibly feel the embrace of the warmth of the aloha again of the island.
Bob, you come twice a year, stay with us. You and I always have a delightful time. It seems like a celebration, I think, to both of us. And you come to teach out of a very heavy and profound book called TSK, Time, Space, and Knowledge, by your root teacher, Tarkane Tulku.
Right.
I was wondering if you'd speak a little bit about that book. And for 34 years you've been teaching from this one source. So maybe you'd talk a little bit about time, space, and knowledge. E equals mc squared, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. It's,
There it is.
well, time, space, knowledge. Yes. Well, that is the title of the book, and essentially, these are three aspects of our everyday awareness, everyday consciousness. It's like we move through space. We use the term, kind of. He gives me space, I take space, how much mental space do I have? So we pay a little bit of attention to those aspects of our experience and discover that actually space and spaciousness are always available within any particular situation. Mm-hmm. This is a kind of a meditative endeavor. We start considering these concepts and begin to work with them and go deeper and deeper, so that different levels and layers of space and spaciousness and what it might mean to actually live with a quality of freedom that space allows.
Beautifully said, quality of freedom.
Then, and the book is actually divided into these three sections. There's a space section, a time section, and a knowledge section. Tartan Tulku Rinpoche, the Tibetan Lama that wrote this, has put together from his repertoire of Tibetan Buddhist practices and Tibetan cultural practices, things that would be appropriate for us in the 21st century for working with. So the space works with our ability to allow and our ability to discover our freedom. The time section and the practices in that arena relate to movement and presentation. What is here? What presents itself? Who we are? The kind of stories that we tell about what is possible for us. How nature and mind and consciousness evolves. And the possibilities of change, as a matter of fact, constancy of change. And certainly from a Buddhist standpoint, that change is the same that the Buddha talked about in terms of it's all impermanent. Everything is impermanent, which doesn't mean that, this tree isn't here and it won't be here for 20 years or 50 years or however long, but that within our participation in the world, we need to recognize that whoever, whatever we are, it's always moving. It's always in process. Yeah. In a way, it's interesting to talk about time from a modern scientific perspective. We can make a parallel here to both the static nature, which is the particle, and also the process nature, which is the wave. And it's not one or the other. It's actually the simultaneity of both of those. And so in the time section, when we're working and practicing, we're working with change and how that happens, both in terms of this is what's happening, that's like a snapshot, that's the particle, and this is part of a process that's always constantly changing. And that too is happening simultaneously. So then we learn through our practices how to hold both of those and not to be confused because this is who I am, but in the next moment I'm actually already different.
Wow, so when you spoke, two things came to mind. One was surrender and the other one's letting go. It sounds like both.
Exactly. Right.
Centering to the process of change and letting go into the brilliance of whatever that moment is. I mean, I'm not trying to be trying to encapsulate.
Right.
But one of our favorite subjects, you and I, has been is about Buddhism, and particularly, of course, for both of us, Tibetan Buddhism, how it's landing in the West. There's one example I'd use. If literally 20 years ago, I once told a friend that the Dalai Lama was coming to Hawaii, and he actually thought it was a joke, some sort of make-believe creature or something. Now, if you say the word the Dalai Lama, he is perhaps considered the spiritual leader of our entire globe. That much power, force, profundity has happened in that short a period of time, that much familiarity by the world of Tibetan Buddhism. So we frequently, you and I talk about how is it landing in our culture. So just putting you on the spot, how do you think it is landing in our culture, these profound concepts and realities that you just spoke of: time, space, knowledge, interdependence, emptiness, compassion, kindness, which are at least familiar through the Judeo-Christian tradition. How do you see it landing?
Well, I don't think, I don't think that these concepts are uniquely Buddhist. Certainly the Buddhist framework, makes them very important. But the most striking things about what's happening today is the globalization and the availability of information that we have at this moment. So that, for example, 30 years ago, if you said to somebody that I'm going to do yoga, they thought, well, okay, that's very esoteric, and you must be somehow unusual in that you're interested in these strange subjects. Today, yoga is, it's in the dictionary. Everybody has, rightly or wrongly, but they have some ideas about what it is. So it's actually, it's entered our culture. Similarly, the concept of emptiness, the concept of the possibility of enlightenment, the development of loving kindness or compassion, the way some of the Eastern traditions talk about it, has also entered our everyday Western consciousness. And there's no longer the rigid barriers between the traditions that used to happen. And certainly that kind of thing has happened before, for example, in Alexandria, back about 2,000 years ago, that there was a cross-fertilization of cultures, but not on a global scale. Sort of, you had these hubs that were able to transmit knowledge of various traditions, and that's the way that things disseminated from Asia to Europe and Christianity and whatever the various Zoroastrian or Mithraic traditions that kind of cross-fertilized each other back even 2,000 years ago. But it never happened on this scale, and it never happened on so many different levels.
Do you find that hopeful?
I think that's wonderful. I think it's an opening to, just as this time has never happened before, these ways of looking at the world have never happened before. So in that sense, it's exciting.
Yeah, and you and I have chatted about 2012 and the Mayan calendar, and also kind of just some sort of shift that we sense or feel it's happening. Apropos of that, is that what you're speaking about, this kind of opening, invitation?
It is. And
globalization on a really fabulous heart consciousness level.
Consciousness level, right. And this is a little bit of a shift from the Buddhist framework or the Tibetan framework, but
I think that's okay.
But I did have the good fortune to spend some time in a high mountain peaks of the Andes and studying with some of the Q'ero shamans. And in the 1990s, they were talking about how the consciousness shift of their world was radically altered by the appearance of the European culture, specifically the conquistadors, and how the transformation happened, the way that they used to see the world, and then the more modern scientific Western ways of seeing. Again, without any valence, without this is good or bad or right or wrong. I mean,
right.
But what they're saying is that the time now is another one of these radical shifts in consciousness. But this time, it's not something that's happening only in the Andes.
Right.
This is not just happening in terms of their world. This is happening globally. And similarly, there are other traditions around, Native American traditions, etc., that talk about this time that of global shift of consciousness. And I think that's the one that we're talking about. The interesting thing is that nobody really knows what it's going to look like. Everybody says it's about to congeal or settle into a new picture, but it's a little bit like, I think, that traditional story of the elephant. Somebody, gets a hold of the leg, and it's like a pillar, and things like that. So we're seeing different aspects, but the whole thing hasn't seemingly showed itself yet. I think that's what we get to participate in.
Right.
Not only that, but what's interesting is that it's not happening to us, but it's happening through us. It's like we bring who we are, and that completes the picture. It's not like we're waiting for something from the outside to happen. It's more like by doing our work, that's what, those are the pieces that the mosaic needs.
Right.
So I may be the little blue piece here, and you may be the little yellow piece over there, but we can't yet see at least I can't yet see the big picture.
I'm hearing a lot of positivism, though, and a lot of can-do in this, a lot of hope.
I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of we can affect our worlds.
We are constantly affecting our world.
But now it's going to be even more so on a much more powerful level.
Yes, it is. And it is true that, the more spectacular things that we see on television, the violence and some of the destruction that we see, and yes, that is happening, but at the same time, that's one aspect, which is perhaps you could say that's the cleaning up, the destructive aspect, but there is also the growing aspect. So as something is being like in the tree, I mean, as the leaves fall and as the fruit falls, and then if you leave it there, it's going to rot, and that's fine because it's the fertilizer for the next one. And so it's the natural process that we're seeing both the destruction. We're not quite as capable of seeing the construction or the evolution of the new that's also happening simultaneously.
You're going to the root inspiration for the show altogether, which is I just don't think the message is how kind we are to each other, how good we are to each other, how we uplift each other on a moment-to-moment basis. Nobody makes you say hello. Nobody makes you do so many generous acts in one day. If we actually added all the generous acts that happened to us in a day, it would far outweigh. But we focus on the negative, or we focus on the pejorative, so-and-so cut me out, but hundreds of kind acts of small generosities and upliftedness, just compassion happened to you all the day. Yeah. And we don't notice it. We don't actually, I'm just saying, it's time we notice how we uplift each other.
Absolutely, and that's one of the biggest things that's happening, not just because of Buddhism or Hinduism, but it's happening in all the traditions, that we don't hear about the 200 people that show up for a retreat and do a week-long loving kindness meditation.
Right. And
that becomes rooted in them, and they take that home.
Right.
And it becomes more and more kind of like the Zippy picture. It's like, they become part of the ohana no matter where they are, because they're spreading that quality of aloha, to use the Hawaiian term.
That's a good term.
Yeah.
You and I have chatted, and I'm going to get a little personal here. To say that you did not have an Aussie inherent upbringing would be quite an understatement.
Yes.
You were raised in Hungary, in Budapest.
Correct.
You're one of the few people, trying not to refer to age here, but you were actually under Nazi rule. You lived under Nazi rule.
I was born during the war.
Right, and then later actually knew communism, communist control as a very much your worldview, your political system. So I wonder if you just talk about what that's left with you and in you, and how it's helped you, how it's made you work harder.
Well, on a personal level, I guess it left me with a non-group-oriented view, in the sense that I don't join political organizations. I think political organizations are, like I was talking about time, they have their time. They will last for so long, and then they will change. And I've experienced that personally a number of different times under different circumstances. And so I believe in very, very much that we can construct and cultivate the positive qualities within ourselves, within our society, within our environment, and that's what I put my focus on, rather than political parties and large-scale organizations that I've just seen come and go a number of times in my lifetime, and have been very strongly affected by.
Very strongly.
Yeah.
What does make you laugh?
What makes me laugh? A hummingbird makes me laugh.
Yeah, pretty funny.
A butterfly makes me laugh. A hibiscus makes me laugh. Beauty makes me laugh. It's not just a matter of like humor. It's more a quality of joy.
You have an insatiable yearning for wisdom, for learning, especially the wisdom traditions. What motivates you? Where is that coming from?
I'm amazed by the creativity of the human spirit to discover apparent and not so apparent realms that become available, that unfold if we learn how to listen. And so I guess I consider myself a lifelong student in listening, and when I hear things and see things and things open themselves up to me, then I'm interested in forming relationships. So then I go and I do the conceptual part and read about it, and I do the experiential part. I sit with it, and I do the communicating part and talk to my friends about it. So, yeah.
You know, if we're the first generation to have kind of taken up these teachings from the East, you could say, and you and I have also chatted about how we think the next generation is going to do a much better job than what we did of integrating these into your lives. What do you think's been the ground that we've laid, and your hope for the future?
Well, I hope what we have conveyed is the spirit of curiosity and inquiry, and the richness that can provide. Certainly, on the technological level, you know, our generation has created things that were unthought of, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I hope that the generation that's here and the generations to come can build on that and can take that to heart as a path, as a way of living.
As a way, yeah.
Yeah.
A more integrated.
More integrated, yeah.
Right.
That perhaps the materialism of the 50s and more the 50s than the 60s of the 20th century can be counterbalanced, just as they were in the 60s in a more eruptive style. But now that materialism, 50 years later now, that materialism can be tempered with a spiritualism that's just as important to them. So that they stand on both legs. In Buddhism, we talk about both the wisdom component, what you know, and also the action component, what you do. Skillful means and wisdom. And so, you know, how they do, yes, that's the material world. But does it come from the heart? Is it supported by a spiritual view?
You know, I again want to reiterate what a blessing it's been to have you in my life.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's very meaningful to me, and it's mutual.
And how much it means to shoot basketball with you in the pool. And maybe we should do this together. Ready to go? Pow! 1, 2, 3. Pow! Aloha, Bob.
Aloha.
We're good?